spot. Now, looking at the reopening plan, board members, everything that you see in black print, you have already approved. This is something that you've already seen and approved. Now, if we can scroll down to the first, and scroll down to the first text that is in green, right there. This is section C, part V, and all this is putting the reopening plan in alignment with something the school board has already done. You moved at your last meeting, full meeting, to bring back students that were full-time online if they were failing back to class, and all that does is just codify that in the reopening plan. So we can move down to the next couple of pages down, 3, 4, 5 pages down. Keep going. Right there, I am requesting that the board enter that language right there. Basically, it'll give Dr. Myers and her staff the flexibility they need to serve CDC students, those students that are the most disabled among our student body. You'll go next to the staggered schedule section, Carol, and I think about the second page of that. Keep going a little bit further. Right there. I'm asking that the board add those two sections there. This again is something, actually, two things that the board has already passed. VIII, again, students that are full-time but failing can be brought back by the school's administration unless they're medically unable to do so. And secondly, students designated at risk can be brought back more than just 2 days per week. They can be brought back as many as 4. Again, both of those things this school board has already passed, and we're just putting it in the reopening plan. Now, Carol, if you'll scroll down to, it's quite a few pages. And again, everything in black is right there. Everything in black print is something the board has already passed. I want to replace section 2 with section 3. It just makes it a little bit more flexible for our special ed people to serve the needs of CDC students. We may not be able to run these programs 5 days a week because we've got several teachers and bus drivers.
Are you saying 2 comes out then?
Yes, 2 in red, which is our custom. 2 would come out to be replaced by 3, which just gives Dr. Myers and her staff more flexibility to serve these students according to IEP team. And the last thing, section M is assessment. The last time staying with it, right there. The last time the board met, we didn't even know if the state was going to give tests. Now we find the state is bound and determined to give tests, particularly end-of-course tests. Those are high school tests, and they will be given before the General Assembly can meet beginning in December. This may require some creative processes with the calendar. In that section, I'm asking the board for some flexibility, the flexibility that we need to give those mandated tests. And it's more than just EOC tests. We'll be giving, I think, another round of pre-ACT. I think there's a test that involves English language learners. There's a lot of little assessments, and we may have to bring some students in that are full virtual. All of these tests have to be given in person, so we'll have to do some things about bringing those in. All right, the next section is full virtual open. If you'll scroll down a little bit more, right there. This again is only things that the board has already passed. Again, at-risk students can be brought in more in person. And some time ago, you passed a measure by which CTE students can be brought in small groups to work in the labs, and this would be putting that in the plan. And then lastly, all the way to the end, right there, this again is the same language we had in the staggered schedule. It just allows my staff to play with the calendar for assessment reasons only, and with special populations, it gives Dr. Myers and her staff some control and flexibility over serving CDC kids. All right, next, a little bit more. All right, right there. That is and has been the threshold, the metric that this board has had in place now for months. Back when you adopted it, it was the only thing available. If you wanted to go with some other metric, you could go to the 7-day average. You could go to the White House Task Force, which we now have. I need to tell you, though, that the Tennessee Department of Health advises against the use of the acceptable threshold or any other individual metric in school reopening and closure decisions. In point of fact, no medical organization, the CDC, nor the Tennessee Department of Health, nor anyone in state government, or anyone in Tennessee Department of Education has ever recommended any metric whatsoever. And in fact, if you decide this evening to go from date certain to date certain with any plan, you should probably completely rescind that section right there. And Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report and recommendations.
Okay. Any discussion, Mr. Meredith?
A question on clarification. If you'll back up to the little Roman numeral X, where we were talking about the troubled kids coming back in, right, yeah, one more. I guess the previous one. Okay, yeah, that one. Okay, you've got this section in here, and then you also have the same section a little earlier. And if you'll scroll back up to that, you reference 2 days, and what I'm trying to understand is why you even have one more, go up a little bit more.
That plan calls for going to, for instance, 50% of them going to school 2 days and a day off, and the other 50%. So any student under a staggered schedule would be in school 2 days. If you put that suggested language in, then we could put at-risk students in 5 days.
At your discretion.
Pretty much
Pretty
in
much.
principle.
Oh,
It wouldn't be-
okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay, I'm with you now, okay. I
Principal or
apologize.
parent?
No, just the
not parent,
educators.
Just principal.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Based on the percentages we had looked at, what were they titled that? What would their percentage, what is their percentage today? Do you have that information?
Percentage of what?
Cases?
The number of quarantine cases, is that what you're looking at?
Well, no, based on what, would you go back to what we were using, please?
The very last
Oh,
thing was on
Yeah.
Oh, heavens.
The threshold, right.
Yeah, I actually have that.
I was looking, you talking about the numbers, Mary Beth?
Yes,
So today, you talking about like,
The
14
threshold for,
right there they are.
yeah, the 14-day average right now, that would put us in red, that calls for 10 or 11. Today, it's 63. The 14-day average in Washington County today is 63.4.
and
Thank
10
you.
or 11 is what we're going by?
That's is what, actually, it's not, because we kind of, the board kind of overrode that when you put us back to full enrollment the 1st of October.
Okay,
This is, what's up there is still in the reopening plan, but it's sort of moot.
okay. So we
Would
need
you
to,
I'm sorry, would you recommend we, get a more realistic numbers, or,
You know, but,
maybe Kelly could help right there, I don't know. What do you think?
Mr. Chairman?
yes.
some people-
Oh, yes, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I was thinking, Mr. Fleener.
You know, we were going by the 14-day average, what was the nursing homes
Right.
we're going by. I read something today where that information's not even available right now to
They took
find.
it off, but they put it back on. You can
Okay.
find it now.
So, do we need a motion just to strike this off? Because I don't know that fit what we were doing back at that time in July to fit, but it almost, and I'd like for you to look at Sullivan County and the way Bristol City Schools, they were taking a more, I think one of them called it a surgical approach, where they were doing it class by class, school by school, kind of a base by base, to try to keep as many people in school. The only thing is these blanket rules like this is right here, is you may have a problem on the north end of the county, and everybody in the south end be great, and next thing you did is you just called everybody to go home because of one school or whatever, was having a problem. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
So I'm not sure how to definitively give you a number that wouldn't be a blanket rule.
I'm not either.
Well, Annette was, I was gonna ask something, but go ahead, Annette.
I think if that would have happened when it first started off and it was getting bad, but I think we've reached the point that it has touched every single school, and there's schools that cannot run due to having staff and bus drivers out. So I think going forward, we're gonna have to do something to fix the problem here, and then put that in place to take care of that once it is back under control.
Mr. Riddle.
I think, just to move forward with our plan here that we've got in front of us, I think we need to go ahead and strike that, because like you said, it's moot at this point, and just, I'd like to make a motion that we remove the school operating scenarios at this time.
Second.
Discussion, I got a question. So with that, in that whole thing, all that other green language, do we need to add that in with his motion?
You could.
Or does that need to be a separate motion? You're
Yes.
you're asking us to put that into
I'm
plan.
asking that my recommendation be put in place, most of which the board has already put in place.
Right, we're already doing
Make
it.
it much cleaner.
Yeah,
Okay.
so is that, can you,
So at this time, I'd like to make a motion that we remove.
Well, you can't, you ain't got a motion in a second.
we got a
Amend
You
it.
gotta
motion second.
rescind that.
Well, we can just do another
rescind it?
one. I'll
Okay,
rescind
Right,
you
no,
rescind
fine.
your second?
I mean,
Yeah.
That's the cleanest way, I'm sure. So, Ms. Buchanan rescinds her second, Mr. Riddle rescinds his motion. Now,
Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we remove the section 6 school operating scenarios at this time, and then amend the document as stated, deleting the red portions and including all the green areas to the document to clean it up.
Second.
got a motion second, any discussion now?
Are we gonna replace this
At a later time.
at a later time, as in this meeting?
That I don't know. I mean, that's up to you all.
Yeah.
So, let's vote on this right now, and then we gotta revisit, so. Good, roll call vote, Jennifer?
Mr. Masters?
yes.
Mr. Riddle?
Yes.
Mr. Irvin?
Yes.
Ms. Buchanan?
Yes.
Ms. Dellinger?
Yes.
Mr. Fleener?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Hammond?
Yes.
Mr. Meredith?
Yes.
Mr. Day?
Yes. All right, now, to what Ms. Buchanan's saying, I'm gonna ask, do we need to do something now to fix this?
There has to be some kind of guideline.
I'd love somebody to show it to me.
Well, that's what I was gonna say when Mr. Fleener was talking a minute ago. You told us that nobody will recommend a guideline.
That is true.
I thought I heard you say that, well, you didn't say it, but what we were going by, we don't really need to be going by. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
When the board made the motion to go full virtual and then back to, when the board took the stance of going back to full in-person on October the 12th, you basically trumped what's on the screen.
Okay,
It hasn't been in effect in 3 weeks anyway.
okay. So are you looking for us to, just so we're being clear, you're looking for us to create a new motion as far as what we're gonna do reopening wise?
No, for 2 reasons. One, no medical professional will give you any kind of recommendation to do so, and I don't know how to advise you.
Okay.
Jason.
Yes, sir, Mr. Master.
And you're also saying no surrounding counties has a agenda right now either, right?
You know,
Or did you
I'd have
say?
to research every webpage, and I just haven't done it.
Okay.
I know everybody's just floating. I mean, some systems are calling off certain grade levels, and some systems have this school closed or that school closed.
But
That
they don't
sounds
have it.
attractive, and I'm gonna tell you a story though. Last week, when you left it up to me, I took about 24 hours to make a decision. And I was watching 3 schools. And it was on the basis of 3 schools that I decided to go full virtual for that Thursday and Friday. By the end of that day, 1 school had passed 2 of those schools that were so sick in the number of new people that were quarantined. So if you sit and say, okay, we're just gonna surgically do this by just 1 school at a time, it changes too fast. I mean, we have seen the numbers go down in 3 days by 100+ quarantines. You put them back in school, that number could spike again. So it's not easy enough to say, okay, we want to be surgical, and when it's low, put them in school, because you'll be having them in and out of school every other day. The thing, if I had any recommendation at all, is just to pick a format and stick with it long term, because that's what the teachers want. So they're saying, give me a way to approach these kids, let me teach that way, and don't change your mind every time you meet. If I can be so bold as to say that.
Please.
I'm shutting up.
Mr. Fleener.
Is there a recommendation in, Dr. Flannery, that you feel that we need to be at this time?
We are still well in excess of 900 quarantines, still have 50 people, actually over 50 now in the last few hours, people that are COVID positive. Until we get those quarantines down, we can't have school. And the fastest way to get quarantines down is to keep people physically out of the buildings. That means full virtual. I know that's not the best way of teaching kids, but at some point, we've got to get the quarantines down so that we can teach kids.
So with that being said, how do you figure on, and I know we're jumping into the future then, so we go 2 weeks virtual and stay, and I'm just throwing this out here, but for the sake of argument, you say we go so many weeks virtual to get these numbers back down into, to where we can handle them and get our schools staffed. Then will we take a surgical approach, classroom by classroom, school, kind of like we were up until the point where, we had to do all virtual last week?
Yeah, we have to. We've got what at 1 school, an entire grade level reversed, and we've got a couple other full classrooms. So yeah, that is sort of surgical. But when you get to the point of shutting down a whole school, but not the next school down the road, that's tough. Because then parents are saying, well, there's this many quarantines at this school, but just a few less at my school. Are those kids more important than mine?
Yeah, I just see the difference in, you may have 10 that you've got 10 out at 1 school today, and you may have enough to cover it with subs. Tomorrow you have the same 10 out, but yet your subs are already committed to different places. You can't meet. That's the reason why this worked back in July. This was the best idea that we had and for the information we had, but today it's almost so fluid that you can't throw a number up there, and we want a number up there so everybody can see it and see how close we're teetering to that number, so they can say, well, another day or two that we may have to go virtual, again. But there is no such number because it doesn't match every school.
Mr. Irvin.
With us making this motion to do away with that right there, have we done away with the Tennessee Rural Health, the quarantine and stuff?
No, we don't have that authority. That's Tennessee Department of Health, and we can't get around that.
So we do have to follow
That what they call an algorithm, which is actually a flow chart. We are obligated by law to follow that.
Mr. Buchanan.
So, my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is if someone tests positive, that is a spouse of a teacher, that teacher is out for that 10 days plus 24 more days, is that correct?
Nurse Wagner, you've just been summoned.
It ends up being almost a month, is that not?
So you're asking if a teacher's spouse tested positive, that teacher would be out 24 days. Their 14 days starts after the 10-day isolation of the positive case.
And does that go with like if we have students and a parent gets
Yes.
that,
Any household contact is 24 days. Like, for example, I have 2 nurses out right now because their children are positive cases. They're out 24 days right now.
thank you.
Ms. Dellinger?
If we did decide to go virtual, what time limit, would be the most beneficial? Is there a certain time limit?
We have teachers like for 24 days.
20?
I wish I could,
I know,
I mean,
that's,
I have 0 medical training. I
Right.
don't know.
Well, let
Mr.
me ask,
Meredith?
let me ask you a question if we go virtual. Because one of the big problems that I'm hearing from parents on the virtual delivery, especially since we're doing it asynchronous, is that it didn't work. Can we go synchronous in our virtual delivery?
I'm gonna let Dr. Keys and Ms. Hayes.
And if we can't, why can't we?
What's the, I can't hear, what's his question?
Synchronous versus asynchronous. In other words, if the students were home virtual, why couldn't we just have like Crockett, have a regular 7:45 to 2:45 schedule and everybody be online at exactly the same time? That sounds reasonable in the face of it. I don't know if it's practical for 2,400 high school kids or not. That's just a matter of opinion.
I think we're doing it elsewhere in Northeast Tennessee.
Well, Mr. Riddle?
So, I like the idea of that, but you may run into some problems with that in your lower grades. Your K through 4, especially your earlier grades that can't read and can't get online. So maybe we could do something like that for the older grades and possibly not the lower grades.
Jason,
Yes.
what's your thoughts on bringing K4 back only?
It's a workable plan. We actually polled all of the elementary principals. If you'll drop that for me, their written opinions on bringing back K4 are in one document that we can show you right now, and it's a mixed bag. None of them would just say, hey, it's the greatest thing ever. Some of them are saying, I've already got so many teachers sick, I don't know if we can do it. Some of them said, I don't have enough Chromebooks, well, we took care of that today.
Right.
So, mixed bag, and I didn't know enough to have an opinion, so I just asked the people that did. And I'll just let you read what they said. If we bring it up,
Yeah.
Mr. Riddle's got something while we're doing that.
Dr. Flannery, is there any way we could get our data on the cases broken down a little further for us, like by grade level and teacher per grade level instead of just by school?
I'm sure we can. We know exactly who they are.
That would potentially help in maybe getting some of the lower grades in, just seeing what the cases are there.
Kelly, do you want to weigh in on that? How hard would it be to drive that data down that far?
We could do it, it would be more time consuming. They don't have enough time to do what they're doing right now.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
The biggest complaints with K3 that I have is they cannot type. So at one time, we were having teachers prepare lessons and sending them home so they could work on paper. Is that not feasible now
Yeah, I'll put it
for
over here.
each teacher to do the work, putting that together and sending it home so that they can be able to use their pencil and paper?
Yeah, I just wanted it on those.
Yeah, sure. We were just trying to get away from so much paper being sent home and having to come get the stuff.
I understand, but if it's not working, we have to change the plan. And if we can't be in the school because their teacher can't be in the school, then learning stops anyway. So
Whoever has control of that screen will just slowly scroll it as people leave.
It's not me.
And these are the words of our building principals. And that what's in red was my question to them.
This is principals?
These are principals, yes.
Scroll slowly.
what?
You got a bunch of slow readers.
We read our talk slow.
Not all the responses are this long. probably should have shared this earlier, I just didn't.
Was that question asked to the two high school principals?
It was not, I can tell you what they want to do. They want virtual. And the reason I didn't ask the high school principals was because the question was about K-4 students. That was the only.
Well, I just can't see how we can,
Thank you, Karen.
support K-4 when I'm sitting there looking at high school kids that's fixing to take tests in December. What's gonna happen there? How bad is it gonna fail?
So they're all pretty much advocating to go virtual. Is that what I'm understanding?
I can't speak for 650 educators, but the ones that care enough to send me an email are almost uniformly for full virtual.
So, are we comfortable setting a bar? On that, are we comfortable setting a bar on when's enough enough? Nobody seems to know how to tell us how to do that. Mr. Fleener.
There was something on there, do you care to scroll up or just to know that, right there? There's something right there that I think needs to be a high nail on this going forward, if we do go virtual, is the administrators and SROs. We need to make sure that our SROs are still being available to be in their schools, because we need help with reaching some of the kids that we can't find. And some of the, especially with the school SROs, I mean, they're friends with some of these kids. And I hope they're still available to continue that job. If we do that, I hope that's the first time I've seen that, but that makes a very, very good point.
Well, now, I'm sorry. Even on virtual, they're still corresponding, and they're finding out whether they've been tested, or whether they're through quarantine. Am I right with that? I mean, everything, there's still a lot of communication, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Master.
Well, my only thought on asking about K-4 is, of course, about students, but it just makes a hardship on the parents in that grade level. Especially when you got, a mom and dad that both has to work, then you got childcare. Then when they come home, they've got to do lessons. I mean, it's just.
Well, see, Mr. Meredith, or whenever you're done, sorry, whenever you're done.
I mean, I agree with Mr. Masters on that. And it's not so much about the hardship on the parents, although I hate that. It's that we've got K-3 kids that aren't learning to read.
No.
And so their reading attainment when they hit the 3rd grade is going to be in the tank, and they're burdened the rest of their life. I mean, if we're not careful, somebody's going to get us for negligence. I don't know. We need to get them in school.
Ms. Buchanan.
So if you end up sending those paper packets home, they have ELA workbooks, they have math workbooks. All of those things can be sent home, and their teacher can be in front of them. They also have books that can be sent home, because their book bags were sent home for the week, so that their parents can read with them. That's nothing new. That's something that you have to do every single night, whether your kid's sitting in the classroom or virtual, either one. They take their book bag home every night and they read their book with their parent. That's nothing new. That's nothing out of the ordinary. But when they have it in front of them with pencil and paper, those smaller ones can learn from their teacher off of a virtual aspect whenever they're sitting in front of them, teaching from the same piece of paper. That's the problem everybody's telling me, is they cannot work this device. They are having, and that's why they're taking hours and hours to complete stuff, because they're having to complete it on this device when they can be completing it in the math book or in the ELA stuff that's been sent home, if they can be completing it with their book baggies, those types of things. So if our plan is not working structural wise, that's procedural, and something needs to change procedural.
Quick question.
Mr. Mayor.
How do our K-3 kids interact virtually with their teacher? I haven't heard that happen. I mean, I mean, where they interact, I mean, I think they can watch something to listen to them, but I haven't heard that they're, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I haven't heard that they're actually interacting with the kids virtually.
Well, mine's a fourth grader, and he is on there every day, and they have a morning meet every morning.
Okay.
And they're supposed to show up to their morning meet every day, and
That's what I was getting at on the synchronous piece of it.
Mr. Mayor,
Right.
I've spent time in lower grade classrooms in various elementary schools, and I see teachers with students physically in class and teachers with students on the screen, and they seem to take to it pretty well.
Okay.
Much better than I would as an adult. I'm sure there's a lot of gaps and holes in that, but it works with smaller groups. When you get up to 25 kids, it doesn't seem, it erodes.
Dr. Keys will say something.
I'd like to speak not as the secondary supervisor, but as a parent of a first grader in this district. My daughter, when we're on virtual, she doesn't meet every day with her teacher at 10 o'clock. Her teacher sends home weekly book bags. She has her math workbook, her ELA workbook, and she does those with her teacher. Her teacher does small group sessions if need be. I have to take pictures of the math workbook, the ELA workbook, any other work that she has to do with her paper pencil, upload it and submit it into Google Classroom. And so I have that experience. When we were out because of illness, Madison was moved to another classroom for virtual because we had in-person instruction. And so in that environment, we were blessed to experience that. Her teacher had Google Meets every single day. She had small groups certain days a week based on her reading level. She had workbooks. She had all the materials she needed. I can only speak as a parent and our experience, but she interacted with her teacher and her classmates every single day as a first grader.
Thank you. Witness Riddle.
I got a question for Ms. Hayes. Ms. Cindy, as far as fourth graders, do they travel from class to class?
Yeah.
Or do they switch around like a fifth grader would, or are they just with their class primarily?
It varies in the schools. Some are departmentalized and some, and so they do go from class to class. Usually it's just two switches. With fourth grade, one teacher teaches math and science, and the other one teaches ELA and social studies, but it does vary among the schools.
Thank you.
Mr. Flainer.
I'd like to ask Ms. Wagner, of our 900 and some that we're out, could you tell, do you have a timeline? I mean, would we gain most of those back out of those 900 in 2 weeks, 3 weeks?
Well, it just depends on when their isolation or quarantine started. We have 826 that are either quarantined or isolated. And so that could either be the 10 days, the 14 days, or the 24 days. We don't have them separated in our list. And we have 50 that are isolated, which is confirmed positive, which means they would be back within 10 days. Again, it depends on what day they started.
Okay.
We can go back individually and look at each person, but from this, the document that we keep, we don't keep what day they're coming back on this overall document.
Well, everybody in here needs to realize how bad we failed the first 9 weeks of virtual.
I don't know.
I'm not saying all failed, but we had a strong percentage of kids that didn't do their work didn't log on, whatever their excuse was. And we had to change something. And we changed it. So, you know, I don't know how, if we go virtual, we got to fix it. It's not working. So.
What, one second, Nat, she had her hand up first.
So I spoke to several, actually I didn't just speak to them, they were coming to speak to me, high school teachers. And their statement to me was, they've heard that statement over and over. They said the kids who were doing their work when they were virtual are the same kids that are doing their work while we were in 4 days a week. The kids who weren't doing their work are the same kids that weren't doing their work when we were virtual. So, I don't know how you fix that.
Mr. Hammond.
I was just gonna say, the first 9 weeks were a learning curve, and the teachers don't wanna go virtual. They want their kids in the classroom. And it's not a matter of want right now, it's a matter of what we have to do to move the system forward in a healthy and safe way. I've seen virtual 5th grade. I was at home where there was a 3rd grade, different schools. I was invited in, and it was working. I won't say it was working as if in person, but the teachers were going out of their way. And I think if there's more of a communication process, I think that's where a lot of it is. And then student accountability as you go up through the upper grades, if we go virtual. And you know, it's two-edged sword.
Mr. Fleener.
Well, I think for the sake of consistency, which is obviously by reading these emails, you know, in the last little bit that I've been getting, you know, seeing some of these that's on the board right here. You know, just like Mr. Hammond said, it's a double-edged sword, but we do need to be consistent on something. And I think we need to get these 900, you know, quarantines back, or the majority of them back, and then we can pick up and try to move back at a, you know, in person, and or see what that looks like. I mean, our area numbers, we need to be cognizant of what those numbers are. And you know, right now we're drowning as far as our county, but if you'll entertain a motion, I believe I'm ready to throw one at you.
Could we let Mr. Masters say one more thing?
Yes, sir.
Is there any way, if we do stay virtual, and I'm speaking more probably of the high school, that we can make sure that they are logged on when school starts, and then they stay in that class till it's over, whether it be an hour or 45 minutes or whatever, and then log on to the next class till we can make sure the attendance is there?
We'll give it our absolute best effort, so
I
to
mean-
make a kid do something that's 20 miles away.
Oh,
from school,
I understand this.
you know, we have enough trouble making them do something when they're sitting in the classroom.
Right.
Now, you know, 24-year high school teacher, I'm telling you the truth.
That's the reason why I'm asking you.
So, and my answer again is we will do the absolute, we got 2 of the finest high school faculties in the state of Tennessee, and they're giving it their all, and they will continue to give it their all. We got some really fine high school students too.
I know.
So, to say that we're failing, I reject that statement out of hand. We're doing a pretty darn good job.
And what brought me that, Emma, that was here our last board meeting,
Yes,
you know, she's taking AP classes.
yep.
And first thing out of her mouth was, when we're virtual, I'm on my Chromebook at 7:45. You know, and I just think that if she can do it, well, they all can do it. I mean, that's, you know,
She is pretty special. young woman.
I'm sure. Mm-hmm.
Mr. Fleener, give us 2 more real quick, can we, before we
Yes, sir.
take that motion?
Yes, sir.
Maybe 3, I won't say one thing.
That'd be great.
Mr. Herman.
Well, I'm not gonna make this in the form of a motion or nothing, because Chad's got something. But I wanna throw this out there and ask your all's opinion on it. What do you all feel, how do you feel about going, and this is kindly administrator asking, how do you feel about going 100% like we was one week, the next week go virtual 100%. I mean, do
And back and forth.
back and forth.
As a superintendent, I'd say we have a bunch of teachers just resign.
It's too difficult.
It's hard.
Why, I mean, how would they not like that? They'd have their kids in 1 week, teaching them, come Friday, you know, give them this homework and stuff like that, and then the Monday and Tuesday, the next week it'd be virtual, or vice versa, which, I mean, if we're gonna stay at virtual from now to whenever, I think we're gonna jeopardize the kids, because we got kids out there that's gonna be suffering. But that 1 week, I'd have them in the classroom. And then the next week it would, because I got emails saying, you know, I don't have nobody to take care of them. And I understand that. That's part of being a parent. But I don't know. I just can't. I can see a lot of problems in my area with virtual, straight, full virtual.
Ms. Buchanan.
Okay, so I want to say that I know Shannon Gray runs a tight ship. And I know that Gray was really rocking this. And I know that Shannon was working with other principals to get those things on board, which helped my children because Mark and Shannon were working together to figure this thing out. So they were rocking this. So my thing is if we've got schools that have problems, go to Shannon Gray, go to Mark Merriman. Let's see how they can interact. Our principals and our schools work well together. They really talk to each other. Our teachers are the same grade levels, are working back and forth. But I have a statement that I want to read from one of the emails that I got. It says, we all want our kids in school. Teachers, students, parents, and the board understand that kids do better in the classroom, but at what cost at this point? There's a lot of cost going around because, and not just in kids, but our employees. You know, everybody wants to compare this to the flu. The flu doesn't leave you with heart problems. The flu doesn't leave you with kidney problems. The flu doesn't leave you with brain problems. And that's what it's doing to our kids and our employees. So at what cost do we want this back in school? That's something that really has struck me and stuck with me all week long.
Thank you, Nick. Let me say one thing before you make that motion. So, I think we all realize we all want the kids in school as soon as possible, as fully as possible. The reason we're here today is because Dr. Flannery cannot operate schools under the current circumstances and where we're at with the quarantines. So I just want to make that clear that's why we're here. So, Mr. Flannery?
Well, can we get I'd like to hear from Ashley or Dr. Keys and Ms. Hayes just before I make this motion, because I'd like to see, what their opinions are, if y'all will allow it, to hear what they think. I mean, they've got the ear of a lot of these principals and teachers. I'd like to hear from them just right before.
Dr. Myers is in the room too.
And Dr. Myers as well,
Big chunk of
if you'd allow that.
Yeah, it'd be great. Mr. Keys, I'll go first.
Okay, so to speak for my principals, the last time I spoke to Peggy Wright, she said she had enough staff in her building to run her school. Boone, it's different. They're struggling a little bit with quarantine and illness, which we heard about that at the last meeting. My teachers cannot do virtual and in person. They are wonderful, they're giving it their all, but my best teachers are calling me in tears, just burned out at this point, because they're trying to take care of the virtual kids while they have in-person kids. And they don't want it to be, they want to give 100% to both, and physically they cannot do that at this point. I've had teachers try to live stream instruction, but when they're up walking around talking to kids, the kids over here can't hear them. And so then they're getting complaints there. They feel like it's a lose-lose if we're 50%. And right now, when we're 100%, Daniel Boone has almost an enrollment of 1,300. And that last day that we were in school, they were, I think, 658 students in the building. So technically, it's 50-50 there that day with illness and remote learners and everything else. So the teachers, they absolutely do not want hybrid. They can't do it at the high school level. Parents, my high school parents have not been very vocal, I will be honest. The emails I'm getting are probably the same emails you all are getting, and those are those early grades. I've had one parent at the high school, two parents at the high school who have been very vocal with sending emails. One wants 100%, the other wants virtual because he says it's not safe. So I'm not really hearing from high school parents.
Thank you.
That's all the information I have.
First of all, I'd like to mention what Ms. Buchanan mentioned earlier. Every principal and every teacher in this district is giving their heart and soul to try to make this work. You know, and it's not just during the week. It's on weekends, they're working Saturdays and Sundays. They collaborate. Principals, we talk all the time. I talk with them, they talk with each other, trying to get support. How do we support this teacher that's struggling? So they're bursting at the seams. They are crying at night. And your teachers are as well. They're trying their very best. And they're getting better and better. And the key word here is consistency. We all agree we want our students to learn, but that's what we're here for. But we've got to have some consistency for everybody. That even includes parents. It's hard to say, okay, I need to find childcare this week, and in 2 weeks down the road, I don't need childcare. It's hard. We've got to have consistency for them so they can get steady childcare. We have to have consistency for our students because KA students work best in a routine. This is what they know is going to happen in the next 2 or 3 weeks. All right, let's go for it. Teachers need consistency on how to plan. It might sound simple to some of us, but it's a different planning. When you have full virtual, all in school, or hybrid, completely different planning and completely different communication. It is not the same. But I can stake my life on it. Every one of them are trying their best. And they're feeling defeated. They feel like people don't notice that they're trying their best. No matter what you believe, if you should go full virtual, in-person, or hybrid, we all still want the same thing. And I see no reason why Washington County couldn't take the lead in this region and show everybody, we can make this work. Let's stick together. Let's find something consistent. Let's get our SRO officers and support them. And they do now, but let's come up with a plan with those slipping through the cracks that are not showing up at a full virtual program. Let's hit it full force. Can you imagine what this district can do if we go out full force and say, this is the plan, whatever that plan is, let's go for it as a team and let's work together. Let's help parents the best that we can to provide childcare and help work around their schedules. Let's fight hard for those that are slipping through the cracks. And let's show our principals and teachers that we are backing them and parents that we're backing them. And let's stay with something consistent. 100% in, even a hybrid, that's still not consistent. Yes, they're in school, but they're in and out because of quarantine. Their teachers are in and out because of quarantine. So they're not getting a consistent education from a certified teacher. Because we're having subs and different people going in and covering those classes. We have IAs, trying to cover 2 classes sometimes, back and forth because we got 2 teachers out. So when I communicate with the principals, they just want some consistency. And for everyone to understand, we're all wanting the same thing. And we all are struggling with different obstacles. But if we can stick with one thing and go forward and be the best that we can be, and be that district. Washington County's always been the #1 county in this region. And we can set the example, this will work, and we can do this. And that's what I'm hearing from principals and teachers.
Thank you. Ms. Myers, you need to say anything?
Just echo what other two ladies have said. We are affected by the quarantines. We have a hard time, and especially our classes that are self-contained, having enough coverage. So we're having to pull people, and there's shortage of subs. And our biggest issue at this point is coverage because of the quarantine of the staff. And we have a lot of kids too who, have been placed in quarantine as well.
Thank you.
Well, I just have, after hearing everybody's, I have to know that I've done everything in my power to keep our students as reasonably safe as possible. And at this time, I feel like that's virtual. I don't think we have another choice. I would love to have in person, because I taught lower elementary. I know what that feels like, to be able to have that communication. But at this time, I don't feel safe. I don't feel safe sending our kids back, and I'm sorry, that's the way I feel.
Thank you. Mr. Flainer?
If you're ready, Mr. Chairman, and I'm gonna go ahead and throw this disclaimer out there. I know that this motion will not make everybody happy. It may not even make 5 board members in this room happy. But in the name of consistency and taking a leap of faith to try to get these people back healthy, I think I make a motion that we stay virtual until November the 30th. At that time, I'd like to see us have a board meeting on the 23rd, which would be a week before, and see what the numbers are. That gives us 3 weeks to see if we have an increase in cases in our county. But we would meet on the 23rd to see if we need to extend that through December, or if we could come back and do a case-by-case basis. I really want us to get to that point. I don't think at this time we can, in my opinion. So I'd like to see us go fully virtual until November 30th and meet back on the 23rd to assess the numbers and see if we can start to go back in that case-by-case basis. You got that, Jim?
I second.
All right, got a motion and a second. Discussion, Mr. Meredith.
Yeah, I wanted to ask Dr. Keys and Ms. Hayes and Dr. Myers a couple of questions. Dr. Keys, if the high schools are all virtual, is there any way to deliver that synchronously, where they have to be in class at 7:45 or whatever time the class is, rather than the asynchronous, they log on at 8 o'clock at night and roll through it?
I'm really glad you asked that, Mitch, because I have a teacher who is texting me about it right now.
Okay.
They tried that when we first started, and we had, I think I told you all that, 4 or 5 in your regular classes, 4 o'clock kids show up and that's it. When the teachers reached out to those kids to find out why, there was a plethora of reasons. Taking care of younger siblings getting on. Some of them, they had a ton of different reasons, some of which were working during that time to pay bills for the family, and they were doing their stuff at night. I presented on all of those. Could they be forced to log on at 7:45? We could absolutely make that a rule. But would we have students actually log on at 7:45? Some of them, we're gonna have a lot of truancy. Mr. Murphy's gonna have to take a lot of truancy petitions, and even then, I don't know that that's going to do anything. Ultimately, because then if we go to truancy court, they're going to say, were these kids working before? What were their grades like? We have to turn that in. Why can't you log on at 7:45? Is there another option for these kids to do this work outside the school day? We could absolutely try, Mr. Meredith. But to have a high school kid sit for 85 minutes, I don't think is realistic. I think the teacher could deliver direct instruction for 30 minutes max, and then get on to work and be there available for questions. I think that's absolutely doable, but I don't think the students will show up. I've scheduled a virtual observation on a teacher for 2 weeks, and I said, I want a link to your live stream, and she says, for the past week, only one student has showed up to my first period class. The students are doing the work on their own time. She doesn't have a lot of zeros, but they're not showing up for live streaming.
Mr. Irvin?
Well, I wanna ask her, how would you teach welding in the high school, virtual? How would you teach machine shop? How would you teach ag mechanics, you know? Huh?
In a very limited fashion. That's why the board is letting upperclassmen coming in for laboratory experiences.
Well, I mean, you know, how many of them is gonna come in?
Not many.
That's what I know. So, I'm just,
The most success we've had with that is ROTC. I consider ROTC to be career technical, so I allowed that to be folded in. And the officers at both schools, officer cadets, are coming in and they're doing a lot of stuff.
they're different. I mean, I'm sorry, but that's a different child, or.
It is at Boone and Crockett because of the quality of those two
Yeah,
programs.
that's
It's two of the
exactly
very
right.
best in the
They've
nation.
got, you know, so,
They're having, Crystal says they're having some success, but, you know, not a lot of kids, just a handful in each program, other than ROTC.
but you got, you know, how are we gonna try to build a career, you know, what's the words I'm trying to find, a career option or whatever, or to get a certification with them not even being able to hands-on?
Very
We voted originally to allow that, which I thought we were,
And that's in here.
Yeah.
but
That's
they
in
can
here.
come, so what, I don't know.
Dr. Planner, isn't that in here? I mean, even if we were full virtual, we'd still have our CTE labs.
Right, and y'all did that a month ago, we just want to put it right.
But what you're saying is, Keith, that don't mean they're coming.
No, they're not coming.
I did have, because I was gonna ask Ms. Hayes and Dr. Myers a question too. And,
Please.
Okay. So, Ms. Hayes, I think, and this is what I'm hearing from other parents and teachers, consistency is important. And where we're bouncing back and forth to one thing or the other. I was kind of hoping Mr. Fleener would make it all the way until Christmas. You know, if we're going to go virtual, then why are we doing it for a month and then coming back and numbers go up? Let's just stay out and get rid of it if we can. But Ms. Hayes, you kept talking about, you know, we need a plan, we need to do something. Okay, you have the magic wand. What do we do for your grades?
For my grades, the magic wand, so to speak, if those teachers know that they're on a consistent path, right there is the biggest obstacle. Because then they can relax and breathe and say, okay, I can focus all my attention planning full virtual. But if we didn't have that, so that's the biggest step right there. And then I was talking with someone else, once they get comfortable with it, then we can take that next level, the principals, everybody, okay, who needs additional support with the lessons, who is still struggling. Right now, they're so overwhelmed because they are trying to do 3 different types of teaching styles that last thing I want to do with the principals is to add extra on their plate. So would there be a plan? Yes, because we know, hey, this is set in motion for a while. And we can just really dig in and even offer additional support just for this plan. But every teacher meets continuously with their principals and other teachers in the grade levels, trying to do the best and looking at different ways to teach. And what you had asked Dr. Keys, research shows that if you just go one way, that is not the best way to go with online learning. For example, in the K-8 world, if you're a second grader and you're learning about measurement and converting, would you rather sit online for an hour and a half and listen to the teacher talk about it and write it out and do it on worksheets? Or would you rather your teacher say, hey, everybody go find your yardstick in your house and show it to me? Okay, we're going to reconvene in 40 minutes, and I want you to go outside, and I want you to find one thing to measure. And then I want you to convert all the different ways and check it with that measuring tool. Which way do you think that child will learn the best? And I know you know that, but it's not as simple as we're just going to stay online all day. And it fits that need of that child, even if they watch it as a recording. They can still do that activity and share. I've watched some of these virtual lessons. It's amazing what they're doing out there. And honestly, I don't know if I was a teacher right now, if I could do that myself, because I know how much time they put into it, and it is. I have the utmost respect for our teachers and principals right now. But there is a plan, and that plan is let's do something consistent so we can dive deeper in that teaching style and apply and use all the tools that we have and not think, okay, but next week it might change.
Dr. Myers, it sounded to me like that your biggest issue right now is really just lack of staffing through the quarantines and maybe isolation. You know, if that comes back into play, I mean, you have a special group there. I don't know how you work with those workers. So what's your...
Well, we, that's why in that plan that you all have voted for and supported, we will be working with, the CDC students who are in a full-time special ed placement to have them in school unless conditions just are not safe at all. And that makes me nervous because we're talking about kids with underlying health issues and vulnerable populations, but we also realize that virtual is not the best. So we will be working to, if you all choose to alter the schedule, we'll be working to figure out how to bring those kids back safely and in smaller groups and also provide services for them. Our kids who get online or who get intervention, so they just get a little support in reading or math, we're having pretty good success with having kids log in. We had pretty good success when we were full virtual. But that's different because we're talking about 4 or 5 kids at a time, and it's kind of just like Dr. Key said. It mirrors what somebody said, it mirrors what we see when we're in person. We have a lot of participation in those online interventions in the younger grades, but when you get middle school, the participation drops down a little bit, just like you are in an in-person classroom. It takes a little bit more prompting to get a middle schooler to be engaged. So, but as far as virtual, I feel like special education, if you all were to choose to go virtual, we have good plans in place. But the special ed teachers, they will do whatever for their kids. That is the beauty of the special education department. They're fantastic. But as far as hybrid, virtual, they like consistency too. But we have, I feel like, good solid plans in place for whatever we offer.
Do you have something, please, Ms. Madden?
I still want to, if we do go virtual, I do want to implement something, especially in high school, that they have to log on during school. If we can, I don't know how we.
We've already had 3 truancy courts, and we've cited several already in the juvenile court. So we're playing hardball with those kids that aren't showing up. Mr. Murphy's pretty right.
And I would like to look hard on K4, trying to do.
I mean, when you say log on, I mean, is that log on to do their lesson?
Yes,
Because
I
that-
mean,
Or
when-
to go to the class?
When school starts at 7:45, they need to be in front of the drum room,
Right, but
just
what-
like they're sitting in class.
But what we're doing now, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Keys, but the attendance comes when they complete the lessons that they're given on Canvas or whatever the platform is. So they can do the lesson and never watch the teacher.
Okay.
Is that correct?
Or watch the recorded lesson that was live, or the teacher might make it, like Loom videos, which is screen recording software, where they're going through their presentation for the students, and it's recorded and available online. Like for my first grader, she has a live lesson with her teacher, but she has 5 videos a day while we're virtual of recorded lessons with her teacher, where they're going through and working with her. So teachers are trying to do both.
Yeah.
And
And that's what I'm
students-
trying to get away from. My thought is, I mean, just like if they're in school, they're gonna be in class. If they're virtual, they should be at their computer in class, is my thought. And then if that teacher spends 40 minutes and then tells them we're done, then they log off or do whatever till they go to their next class. And then, just like they're sitting in class, except they're sitting at home, I guess is my thought.
Well, let me ask you this question. If they're sitting in class, if they're logged on and mom and daddy's making the older one take care of the 2 little ones, and they're trying to be logged on, can the parent system handle that? Or does this child, you know, he or she can't take care of the 2 little ones, and they're logged on? That's an issue. I just got a text message there saying, you know,
I did
I'm
too.
leaving him and taking care of them, and they all 3 can't be on this thing at the same time, so.
Ms. Buchanan,
So my question is to Dr. Keys, if that's okay, Dr. Flaherty. How do we deal with children who are not showing up for school in high school regularly?
They are getting reported to Mr. Murphy for truancy. And then he's following the attendance 6.200 plan with the different tiers of intervention and filing petitions for juvenile court.
So normally that's what would be done if they didn't show up for school.
Absolutely.
So are they doing the same thing with virtual?
They are supposed to be, yes. I would have to ask Mr. Murphy, but yes.
So these kids that are not logging on and not doing anything should still be held accountable by the same system as if they were in school, because this is real school.
Yes.
Virtual is real school. You have to turn in the work and you have to make the grades.
Absolutely, and it was eye-opening at the 9 weeks when the report cards came out, and students told their teachers, I didn't think this would count at the high school. Because in March, you know, the state board acted and froze grades.
Right.
Well, that's not the case now.
Right.
And so we had lots of students with that failure rate we talked about earlier that were like, whoa, what do I have to do to pass now? So we are seeing that.
Okay, how about are we still, if we go to virtual, we're still with the jump drives, correct? Are you having trouble getting those picked up and then brought back?
I haven't heard anything about trouble with that, so I assume they're not having any trouble with that.
Okay. Okay. So that's, I mean, I feel like the missing students, I feel like that's procedural and it needs to be taken care of at the high school level with the principals. I mean, they know their students, they know how to contact them. If they don't contact them, I'm pretty sure they go to their door and start knocking on their door. I've been told that by Ms. Sanders several times. So I think that's going to have to be something procedural on the high school level. They're going to have to figure out what to do, and Mr. Murphy's going to have to work with them with
I'm
truancy.
gonna take 2 more and then we're gonna vote.
Okay.
Mr. Irvin?
Well, I'd like to hear from Kelly Wagner. Kelly, your opinion
In regards to what?
in regards of starting school, not starting school, take a break, do a virtual 2 weeks. I'm asking your opinion.
Well, with the way the numbers are, it's hard to tell, because one day you can have, I mean, whenever Mr. Fleener was asking me about the numbers, and I can look at I can go through each school and I can look at, and I can say, okay, you know, come tomorrow, Boone's gonna have 25 of them off, but that doesn't mean the very next day, we're gonna have 25 put back on. So looking at those numbers, it makes it very difficult to say what the numbers are gonna do, because it changes every day. even when we are virtual, that we're getting emails from the health department of people that are either isolated or quarantined. So our numbers are still going up and down even when we're not presently or physically in the schools. I agree consistency is the best thing. I mean, I have kids in the system, and I have one who does great virtually. I have one who has an IEP. She struggles just a little bit with virtual. But honestly, what everyone is saying is consistency. That's the best thing for right now. I agree with Mr. Meredith that if we are going to do virtual, 3 weeks, we're just coming right back to what we've been doing already. It would be best to have the end of the semester, and that just gives everyone some consistency. Because I guarantee when we come back in 3 weeks, I can't guarantee it, but I'm 99% sure that when we come back in 3 weeks, the numbers where we're at now is going to be higher.
Do you agree with the quarantine, how it is laid out?
It doesn't matter if I agree with it or not, it's from the state level, we have to follow it.
Okay. I'm sorry I asked that.
Oh, no, that's fine.
Mr. Hammonds, and then we're gonna vote on the motion.
Getting some texts and emails from parents. I want to make sure that high school teachers, and 99.9% of our teachers I know are wonderful, doing great, but I'm still getting concerns from high school parents that math teachers at Crockett are just giving a link and not actually teaching. What are we doing to ensure that they are doing their job?
We're doing observations now, so we're going in and watching, like I said, I've scheduled one of my math teacher observations already. So we're going in and looking at that. The principals have been trained to be campus administrators, so they're going in and monitoring classes. They're still doing their walkthroughs, making sure that teachers are doing what they're supposed to be doing. I would ask that those parents contact the school principal if they feel that a teacher is not doing what he or she is supposed to be doing, so the principal can investigate. I mean, if the principal is unaware that there's a problem, they're not seeing it, but the parent is seeing it, that first call needs to be to that principal.
Okay, and from there, since 2 of them have done that, what do they do next?
They can contact me.
Okay, thank you.
All right, one thing, I wanna ask you a possible amendment. We got a board member that's got a problem with the 23rd in your motion. Could there be a possibility to make that the 24th the next day?
I was just trying to give them as much time. I mean, if we meet, the only bad thing, if we meet the 24th, is we only go to school 2 days that week. So you'd potentially be telling somebody they have to show up for work on the 30th after they've went home, or they may not be prepared. You know what I mean? The reason I like to do the 23rd is it gives them a day to be ready or not be ready.
Well, we're meeting that 19th, that Thursday already. Could we not?
Well, it's his motion.
I'm sorry.
I do think that this can, I don't like the virtual. I'd like to see us having our K through 3 or K through 4s in the classroom on a site-by-site basis. But, you know, I'm willing, I mean, I'm okay with going virtual. I don't like it. But if we're going to do virtual, we might as well do it till the end of December, the end of the semester. I mean, we're asking these parents to yo-yo this for the next 2 months. And I don't know, that just doesn't seem right.
Let's vote on Mr. Fleener's motion, and then we'll go from there. The motion is stay virtual until November 30th and have a board meeting on November 23rd to assess the numbers and determine if possible to return on a case-by-case basis with the school. Ms. Dillinger seconded the motion. Roll call vote.
Mr. Masters?
No.
Mr. Riddle?
Yes.
Mr. Irvin?
No.
Ms. Buchanan?
Yes.
Ms. Dellinger?
Yes.
Mr. Fleener?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Hammond?
Yes.
Mr. Meredith?
No.
Mr. Day?
Yes. Okay. All right. Anything else, Dr. Fleener? All right.
You wanna go ahead and set the time on that 23rd meeting?
Yeah, let's do that. So November 23rd, everybody get 5 o'clock again? Alright, so November 23rd, we'll meet to relook at opening school after Thanksgiving break.
You said
Meeting-
5 o'clock.
Yeah. That's it, meeting adjourned.
Okay, we'll get that out right this second.